EA is now on Twitch. Join us Wednesday nights when Alistair reads a bedtime story, and Sunday mornings for a few hours of chill casual gaming, plus interviews, special guests, pickup streams, and more. Visit twitch.tv/EA Podcasts and follow us to be notified when we go live, plus access VODs of past broadcasts.
Escape Pod, Episode 951. The Scientist Does Not Look Back. By Kristen Koopman.
Welcome to Escape Pod, the weekly science fiction podcast. I'm Alistair, your host. Audio production this week is by the mighty Adam Pracht, and this week's story is The Scientist Does Not Look Back by Kristen Koopman. Kristen Koopman is a writer, academic, and all-around nerd. Her fiction has appeared in venues such as Translunar Traveller's Lounge, Baffling Magazine, and has been anthologized in We're Here, the Best Queer Speculative Fiction 2020. She can be found at www.kristenkoopman.com, and she is definitely not two smaller Kristen Koopmans in a trench coat. Your narrator this week is Ant Bacon. Ant is based in Manchester, in the UK, with his husband Neil. He is a screen and voice performer, as well as a digital content creator, editor, and very occasional writer. In short, he is a control freak who wants to do all the creative jobs. When he isn't cursing at editing software, he can be found walking his miniature schnauzer Hugo or immersing himself in obscure indie horror films. So make your notes. Push the science. Do not look back. It's story time.
The Scientist Does Not Look Back by Kristen Koopman. Read by Ant Bacon.
Feb 17, 3:40 a.m. Audio notebook for a new project. Revival of a clinically dead patient, a 36-year-old male, died of hypothermia and shock. The technician at the morgue hesitated when releasing him to me. I'm not surprised that with the tone that took over her voice as I corrected her Mr. to Doctor as she took down my details. When I gave her my name, her pen stalled over the paper. A giveaway that his parents had called before I arrived. I should be grateful that she released him to me anyway, honouring my legal right to the body. I should be grateful for so much, I suppose, even if it doesn't feel like it. I have this opportunity to not let his story end in tragedy. Nobody blinked an eye as I wheeled his gurney, covered in a sheet, towards my lab. The advantages of working in a medical school. 1:03 p.m. The physical damage to his body is minimal. From what the police told me, his bicycle hit a patch of black ice on the bridge by his office on his way home. And though the winter has been long and cold, the river wasn't frozen over. The shock of the cold water stopped his heart. And the cold, hopefully, preserved him long enough to get him here. His brain and body are still intact. With my colleagues' preservation techniques, sufficiently low humidity and proper refrigeration, our research group has successfully held organ donations from skin grafts to spleens for 2 months without impacting viability. Well, 57 days, if I recall the paper, and there was resulting neuropathy. But 57 days is surely better than nothing. With the body preserved, restarting the heart is a trivial problem, but the brain has always been the problem with reviving those who, the medically dead. Reintroducing oxygen to the brain cells that were damaged during clinical death will be the difficulty. It's that oxygen, ironically, that causes the bulk of the revived brain's injuries. My previous research on this front has been promising but preliminary, and only with models of patients undergoing therapeutic hypothermia. I haven't even begun testing on animal models yet, let alone human trials. And he was in the morgue for nearly 6 hours before I was able to get to him. That beautiful, intricate tangle of neurons and electrical impulses. I can't miss damaging that. I can't risk damaging him. February 18th, 3:26 p.m. Vihan came by briefly and saw the equipment I'd borrowed. I told him I'm becoming CPR and defibrillator certified, and that would make me more competitive for grants in emergency medicine. And his eyes lit up with the prospect of more funding. No doubt he'll circulate the story to the other graduate students who will hopefully leave me alone. I've also claimed the small examination room of the main lab that my students have previously used to practice preservation techniques. It has more privacy. I only rarely require full cadavers in my work, and... Yes?
Victor, is that you? Are you filling in for the neuroanatomy dissection lab again? The brain bank said you took 6 specimens.
Not exactly a lab, but more for some practice demonstrations. I received a request from one of my students who's been struggling with that class, and hang on, my recorder's still going. Let me just... 3:31 p.m. Well, that is Elise dealt with. The certification line worked on her too, and hopefully it will buy me a little peace and quiet and discretion when it comes to my borrowed equipment. I've also taken what will be necessary to resuscitate him, even if I don't dare use it until I know I can avoid brain damage. I took 5 doses of epinephrine, a portable ECG monitor, and an automatic defibrillator in case the CPR causes arrhythmia. And I'll use it if I have to. A year ago, he shocked himself unplugging a lamp, and I turned to find him laughing and swearing at the same time as he shook his hand out. And I folded it in mine to smother the trembling, and his fingertips pressed warmth into the creases of my palm. When I look at him, I can still feel the backs of his knuckles against my fingers, the spots of heat against my skin. I need to sleep, if only to steady my hands. Feb 20th, 11:58 a.m. Computer models debugged and moderately promising. I returned home briefly to retrieve some notes and a change of clothes. Found myself stuffing several of his items into my bag to bring back to the lab. He's present, he's there, yet every space still feels so empty of him. 12:39 p.m. I keep using his mug. The one where the university seal has flaked off the sides to leave a mark fainter than smoke. Despite all reason, the coffee tastes better from it. I haven't done more than rinse it between uses, and he would chide me about my hygiene if he saw. I would accept every iota of irritation he has if it meant hearing his voice again. Feb 21st, 7:32 a.m. I've synthesized the first batch of my new class of glutamate blockers. I proposed this compound over a year ago by way of protecting neurons during reoxygenation. I suppose it's not theoretical anymore. First trial on a brain bank John Doe unsuccessful. I've identified the problem. While the compound successfully blocks red blood cells from damaging the neurons, it does so by destroying red blood cells. All of them. through the entire blood volume of the body, to say the least. The effect this would have on the patient would be a net negative. Feb 23, 10:14 p.m. On a trip home for clothes, I knocked over a stack of papers and uncovered his monograph, the one derived from his dissertation on the myth of Orpheus, who played his lyre so sweetly that the lord of the underworld let him take his love back to the land of the living, only to look back at the last moment and lose her. He taught himself to play the lyre while working on the myth in grad school. He said it made for a good break, and once he finished, he kept the lyre hanging on the wall of his home office. It's on a free counter in the exam room now. I've put the book next to it so that I can see them both in the same glance and remind myself that he was not always a cadaver. He wrote those words, he plucked at those strings, and he will again. Feb 24, 12:33 a.m. I finally broke down and borrowed the lyre. 4 trials of serenading were unsuccessful. Not that I expected it to work. He would say that I need lessons. I think I just need more sleep. Feb 26, 8:02 a.m. I've discovered a process to render my glutamate blocker temporarily inert until subjected to electrolysis. So the careful application of electricity to the brain should keep the effects localized, allowing the neurons to reoxygenate without cell death or systematic repercussions. Further trials necessary, but for the first time, this feels promising. Feb 27, 11:27 a.m. His sister called. She's the only member of his family who would acknowledge even my existence after our courthouse ceremony. There's a family plot, she said, in a Catholic cemetery, and they want to bury him there. I asked if they would bury him with his ring, and she didn't answer. I'll need to replace my phone as it didn't survive being thrown across the room. 3:53 p.m. I can't sit still long enough to concentrate. I tore a page from his copy of Vigil Bucolics and yelled at him that I would remove pages one by one until he opened his eyes and stopped me. This had no discernible effect on his heart rate or brain activity. Neither did informing him that classics is a useless degree, a previously foolproof way to rile him up. I can't help but think that if he didn't respond to that, then there must be nothing of him left in that corpse. I can't help but think, how dare it be there, this useless lump of frozen flesh, without him in it. (4:45 p.m) Now, he always said that Orpheus looked back because he missed Eurydice so much. That was Orpheus's sin, I think. He retrieved Eurydice for himself, not for her. Bryce had never loved a man before he met me. Never even occurred to him, he said. And I grew up knowing what I am, coming to terms with what that meant for how people might see me. But it took him by surprise when his family... Well, the new unkindness he saw took him by surprise. To suddenly go from person to political statement courtesy of obtaining a spouse. He deserves better than this. And if the universe won't give him his kindness, then I will. 5:36 p.m. I can't spend another moment staring at models on a screen, beginning trials of electrolysis testing in situ. Oh, 6:06 p.m. first trial, unsuccessful. I need to replace the fire extinguisher, and I might also need some sleep. February 28th, 3:11 a.m. Despite my care in preserving him, his hair no longer smells like his shampoo. He combed that shampoo through his hair with his own fingers, whistled idly as he rinsed it out, while I brushed my teeth and breathed the steam of his shower, smudged its foam onto the tiled wall as he peeked around the shower curtain and teased me for stealing his favourite boxers, the ones that said, "Trust me, I'm a doctor," on the back. So incongruous to me that I had on his favourite boxers while his heart stopped, while his organs shut down, while his larynx relaxed to release his last breath, while the beautiful pattern of sparks in his brain that made him him just stopped. March 1st, 10:48 a.m. The second trial of in situ electrolysis was moderately successful, but there's a complication. The power demands are too much for the lab. I've replaced all the circuit breakers, but the samples show that the electrolysis wasn't complete before the breakers tripped. Between the fire alarm 2 days ago and the power outage, it's becoming harder to think of excuses or to fend off the questions. I just need more time. March 2nd, 11:33 p.m. His sister came to my lab. I didn't let her in, but she pounded on the door and shouted through it, spewing words straight from her parents' lips. He told me once that she always got cruel to cover up sadness, so she must be downright despondent. I began packing up immediately. According to the flurry of email activity I now see in my inbox, she went to the university police. We were already gone. We used to watch the sunset over the expanse of this lake in the summer. We bought this cabin as soon as our incomes would allow it. The view reminded him, what he said, of where he grew up. Since the mutual silence between him and his family meant that he had little of his childhood to hold on to, the purchase was worth it. We spent Christmas here once, although it was less than ideal. The winds off the lake were vicious. The cold was so sharp, even the smell of it cut like a knife, and the snowbanks on the side of the highway immediately began slumping into ice melt that got painted ashy with exhaust. I've laid him out in the glassed-in porch with the cabin kept just warm enough to prevent the pipes from freezing. Its lack of insulation has left it the perfect temperature. I've repurposed the dehumidifier from the flooding last summer, and that, combined with the cold, it's better than nothing. It certainly won't be 57 days, but it has to be better than nothing. I took the resuscitation materials from the lab and my samples and what other equipment I could. There are still avenues I can explore. There have to be. March 3rd, 2:53 a.m. Something will work. I will feel the weight of his shoulder against mine as we wait through long grey morning minutes for the coffee maker to finish percolating. When I return from a haircut, he will rasp his fingers over the stiff, short fuzz at the nape of my neck, and his smile will wrinkle his nose as he tells me it feels like velvet. In the fog-breathed cold of a winter night, I'll shiver, and he'll tell me I've never seen a real winter, not like they have in Wisconsin, and he'll loop the soft caress of his scarf around my neck. We'll do one of those hikes we always meant to do, and I'll give him my water bottle when he sips through his. He'll claim to taste my poor choice of protein bar on its rim, and he'll kiss me anyway. I will trace the back of his hand with my fingertips as age sags his skin and makes mountain ranges of his veins. I will watch silver creep into his hair, and I will kiss wrinkles at the corner of his eyes and mouth as they deepen day by day. We will have those days. 11:12 a.m. He wouldn't want to be buried in the family plot. Not when the most love they could muster for him was to wait until he was dead and pretend he wasn't who he was. March 4th, 3 p.m, made a brief trip into town to obtain materials to access the local electric grid directly. Now, the weather won't be favourable for the actual physical activity of it for a while. This winter is bitter-edged with lingering bouts of cold and snow, broken up only by the dull, slushy days that barely manage to break freezing. March 5th, 12:23 p.m, a late-season storm is rolling in over the lake. The forecasts are warning about whiteouts, high volumes of snowfall, and ideal conditions for thundersnow. It's not quite so rare here due to the lake effect. Despite how winter seems to have lasted forever, the lake is already thawed. The meteorologists' excitement is palpable as they talk about the cloud-to-ground lightning. I have an idea. It is absurd at best. But how long until this cabin is found? How long until the university manages to track down the materials I took? How long until his family again attempts to reclaim his body? Every day feels less dizzying, less like something to be endured, and more like a recalibration of my life. My life, not our life. And I refuse. I refuse this tragedy. Oh, we have so few options left. 3:08 p.m. Lightning lights the sky so differently in a snowstorm. The lines of it are smothered by the falling snow, and instead every atom in the air flashes with the strike. Oh, we are close. We are so close. I've set up the lightning rod and placed the electrodes, stepped down the voltage, and prepared what I'll need to warm him back up. I have the latest batch of my compound, but God, if it's not right, if it doesn't catalyze properly, if it does more damage than good. God, there's just no more time. 3:32 p.m. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, about 2 miles away. I've administered the compound. The power in the cabin is flickering. I keep thinking I have to guide him, bargain for him. But I can't sing, and his lyre is buried somewhere in the wreckage of what my life's become. Oh God, his hand is so cold. Oh, my hand is shaking. Oh, please. Please, 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 please. Oh, that struck. The power's just flickered, and... Oh, is that... Oh, God. Oh, God.
emergency, please?
Yes, I need help. I'm about to start chest compressions, but I need an ambulance right away.
March 8th, 10:24 a.m. He's alive, and he's well. And I don't know how to make that clinical and dispassionate. He's been released from the hospital, and I've been released from police custody. They tried to charge me with desecration of a corpse, but that was difficult to do when the corpse was in fact yelling at them to release his husband. I have never been so giddy to be annoyed as when he kept insisting this morning that he slept like the dead. Or at his disapproving look at the film inside his coffee mug when I was over the moon to be ashamed. The difficulties unroll before us like the longest highway in Wisconsin. I mean, the silence from his family is nothing short of ominous, and the taxes, but I can't bring myself to care. I won't be facing them by myself. No, just finishing up some notes.
I thought you were talking to yourself.
Oh, well, technically I am. Or maybe the right thing to do is turn these over to the university. They'll probably want to claim patent rights or...
Victor. How about we worry about that tomorrow?
Yes. Of course. Tomorrow.
Kristen says this about the story. This is a story I return to every time a TV show with a queer character killed off said character or just outright got cancelled. I think of it as my slightly vindictive unbury your gays story. That's a beautiful description of a beautiful story. Love is belligerence. Love is bloody-mindedness. Love is your partner's hand in the small of your back, gently and firmly, reminding you to stand your full height, not the height society wants you to be. Love only ever moves forward through time, through space. Some loves are temporary. Relationships evolve, fondnesses too. The things you loved as a child you might not love now. The things you loved last week you might not love now. We are an idea that is constantly editing itself, and sometimes having track changes on is terrifying. Steer that one way, you get the endlessly angry would-be fans who watch a show they hate for 5 years because it's the only communication they know how to have. Looks at the other, that's staying in a collapsing relationship because it's less terrifying than going somewhere else. Different lenses, different elements of the same idea snapping into focus. Love only ever moves forward, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to let it move forward without us. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is, like the man said, plant ourselves like a tree and say, no, you move. The courage of our lead here is extraordinary. Breaking rules, ruining his career, standing up against the bigotry of his in-laws, and the calcified thinking of his chosen field because he refuses to accept a universe where the most important person in his life is dead. It is absolutely denial, but it is denial persevering. A coping mechanism that's also edited over and over as he relentlessly builds a world he will accept the existence of. turned one way, that's maniacal. Turned another, that is what any of us would do. A partner, a child, a pet. We all have people we would cross every line for. But I would be remiss if I didn't close with 2 points. The first is that I sobbed my way through the back half of this, reading it aloud because Koopman's dialogue is naturalistic, funny as hell, and very familiar. This is what a healthy relationship sounds like for me, and while I've been in one for a very, very long time now, it's always nice to be reminded of what they look like from the outside. The second is an acknowledgement of the anger that this story uses to build hope from. We don't expect Victor's experiment to work because we're conditioned to assume gay characters are doomed. Worse, we've been taught that by shows, stories, movies, culture that have done nothing but sell us a norm, while quietly telling us everyone outside it is disposable. And disposable is a polite way of saying unneeded, or unwanted, or lesser, or not human. We don't accept that, but it's so prevalent that we come to expect it. Until Koopman and their intrepid Victor wrap their fists with love and scientific rage, and pummel a better future into existence. A future where love is for everyone. My favourite story of the year so far. Thank you all so much. As is always the case, we rely on you to pay our authors, our narrators, and our crew, and to cover our costs. We are entirely donation funded, and in 2023 that changed in some very exciting ways, as we became a registered US non-profit. We ran a great end-of-year campaign that year to raise awareness about all the new ways you can help us out too, including the fact that if you pay taxes in the US, you might be able to claim a deduction. Check out the short metacast on escapeartists.net for more ideas, and how to get in touch if you can think of something that's more meaningful to you. Not only do you help us out immensely when you subscribe or donate, but you get access to a raft of bonus audio. You help us, we help you, everything becomes just a little easier. Even if you can't donate financially, please consider spreading the word about us. If you liked an episode, then please consider sharing it on social media, or blogging, or leaving a review. It really does all help. And thank you, once again. Our story next week is Skyscrapers That Twist to the Sun by Erin Brown. Tina will be in the hosting chair, the amazing Sheree L. Stewart will be narrating, and Summer's flying the audio desk. Then, as now, it will be a production of the Escape Artists Foundation and distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, and we leave you with this quote, of course, from Flatliners. Die to be a hero someday if you want to, but don't die to be a celebrity. We'll see you next time, folks. Until then, have fun.